Well, hello there, BookTube. It's been a while, hasn't it? I didn't disappear into the void, and I have in fact done at least a little bit of reading in the last month. So I'd like to discuss that. Now, I said in my last video, or at least one of my previous videos, that I was struggling to find the time to read. I've been having a hard time of it in general for years now. Like, that's just kind of the way my life is. So, I've had another few bouts of migraines. Last week was particularly bad. I pretty much lost an entire week, which was annoying. But I did a little bit of reading, and I want to discuss what I've been reading and what I intend to read in the near future. I did read and finish The Murders of Molly Southbourne. This was an intriguing read. It's a novella. Well, technically, I think it's actually a novel, because the definition of novella is a book under 40,000 words, and despite this only being 117 pages, there is a fair bit of text on each page. It might be over 40,000. One of the a little tangent actually. One of the things that really annoys me is that there are ridiculous delineations in short fiction. So you've got flash fiction, which is stuff that's under 4 pages, basically. Then you've got short stories. Then you've got novelettes, which are short stories between 1,000 and 4,000 words. So between about 4 pages and 15 pages. A novelette is between 15 pages and about 50 pages, generally, depending on word count per page. And then you've got a novella, which is usually between 50 pages and 150 pages, depending on the word count per page. So it's quite hard to determine what is and isn't a novella. Because obviously different word counts per page can make a huge difference in that regard. Or one thing that would be 120 pages, you change the word count a little bit per page and it suddenly shoots up to 200 pages, and it's clear at that point it's not actually a novella. Pretty much every novella that Brandon Sanderson or Stephen King has ever put out is actually not a novella, it's a novel. But that aside, why is it that every book beyond novella is a novel? Like, and I do mean everything. Like, we're talking like the books that are in anthologies that Stephen King writes, the 4 Past Midnight or the different seasons collections that each have 4 books in them. All of the books in those are novels. They're not novellas. They're too long to be novellas. And yet, at the same time, The Stand by Stephen King, which is, 8 times the size of any of those, is also a novel. There really needs to be another set of delineations. There should be short novels. There should be novels and then maybe grand novel or something like that. I don't know what names to pick, but there should be a delineation there, because reading something that's 300 pages long or 200 pages long feels very different than reading something that's 900 pages long. The level of depth you can go into, it's a different experience, and the tone is different, the pacing is different. It's a different medium, in the same way that what you can do with a novella and what you can do with a novel is different. So yeah, I think there should be delineations there. But yeah, anyway, this is probably classed as a novella, but at the very least, it's a short book, very short. I really quite enjoyed this. It was. I'm gonna do like separate reviews where I go into spoilers, because I don't want to do spoilers in these videos. But my singular book reviews will have spoilers in them. So. To give you the concept is you follow Molly Southbourne and you follow her story as she's growing up, and there's a strange body horror magic thing happening that's connected to her bleeding whenever she bleeds. And I don't want to go into too much detail beyond that because it's such a short book that it would spoil it. But it describes her coming to terms with and confronting this strange going on. And it's basically a horror novel that describes this one event and follows a woman trying to handle these events. I was very, very pleased with what I was reading. It was engaging, it was exciting, and there is a sequel, so I can seek that out. I was a little surprised, though, when I got to the back page and found that the author is someone called Tade Thompson. I assumed it was a woman who wrote this. That's Tade Thompson there. This is a book about a woman, and it's written from the perspective of the woman. It goes through her internal monologue, her thoughts and feelings. This feels like it's written by a woman. Props to Tate for this. He really pulled this off. Like, I was surprised that was written by a man. That aside, though, the other book that I managed to read, finally, Senlin Ascends. Josiah Bancroft has potentially managed to jump into my top 10. This book is frankly incredible, and the pacing changes that I will go into in the review really make it feel like so many different books kind of woven together. It is in many respects a fantasy. I would say some have called it magical realism. I can get what they're getting at, but I'm not convinced this is Earth that we're on. It has Earth-like names. It might be a version of Earth, but it's the closest it is it might be like early Renaissance Iran-ish, if it was based on the modern, the real Earth. But even then, it's very fantastical. The tower itself is a fantastical element, so it's definitely not the real Earth, but it might be based off Earth to some degree, which is not a bad way of having a basis to build your world off. Starting with Earth and then changing bits is a cool way of making a fantasy world. Some may find that a bit derivative. I quite enjoyed it, and I don't think it's too badly explained. You occasionally get the odd name or word that would make you think of place names in that region, but that's about as close as it gets. There's not even any clear delineation as to exactly who is what race. Maya is definitely dark-skinned, because they describe her, and Adam, I think, is dark-skinned. I think they describe him as being dark-skinned, so I'd assume his sister is as well. Or at least olivey-skinned, I think they said. But that's the closest we get to even a racial identity, so it's hard to really place exactly where it's happening or what's happening. But yeah, really enjoyed this book. I'm looking forward to the review of this, and I'm going to go into a fair bit of detail because I think this has the potential, I have the rest of the series, to become one of my favourite series. It's a refreshing read, and I hope that it is just as good as I think it is. It's not just that I'm finally getting into reading and this is one of the first real series that I've managed to sink my teeth into. Because if that was the case, I would have ended up falling in love with The Way of Kings, and I didn't. So I think it is just that good. Now, I am still partway through Tau Zero. I had to stop because I wasn't feeling well. The migraines have been a problem, like I say. So I'm going to finish that off. There's still a few days left for the month anyway, so I'm going to continue this, and by the 1st, I won't have finished it, I doubt. That bloody phone. by the 1st, I probably won't have finished this. So I doubt it'll be a read that I'll actually have finished in March. It was on the March TBR, but I'll finish it within a few days. I said that when I made the last video, I said that I would read this in one day, and theoretically I could read it in one day. It is short enough that I could. This took me just shy of 3 hours to read. So it is possible I could have read that in one day. But I didn't. I read it over 3 days. I read the latter chapters of Senlin in a 2-hour plus reading stint. A few days back, I was sitting reading, and I sat and I read for an hour and 15 minutes. Then I sat and read again for another hour and 20 after a short break. So that's a lot of reading for me to pull off in one day. Now, it may not seem like a lot for people who are really into their reading and read for extreme amounts, but for me, reading for that long, it tires me out. It makes me feel very unwell. It can trigger my migraines. I need to pace myself in my reading. I can reliably get an hour of reading in a day if I push myself and time it correctly. I can maybe get to 2 hours. Over 2 hours is really pushing it, but I really did enjoy it, and I hope to be able to get that reliably in over time. If I can train myself into reading for half an hour, maybe an hour a day, every single day, then maybe I can get my eyes, my brain to react well to that and not have those horrific migraines all the time. Because the main problem for me is as soon as I do anything that's eye intensive, like reading or anything that requires me to focus, I end up making myself ill. I can get away with watching TV because you can be somewhat passive with that. You can watch the telly, you can look away for a moment, you can close your eyes for a second. You can get away with that with a lot of television. That's why I like stand-up comedy, because you can spend a lot of time not focusing on the screen. Same with sitcoms. Film is fantastic because I can sit for 2 to 2.5 hours, watch a film, and then I can go and rest. I can have a nap. I can lie on the sofa and stare up at the ceiling for a while and let everything rest up. It's why I gravitated to TV rather than books. Video games, I struggle now to find any time to play video games that doesn't make me exceedingly ill now. I used to be able to play for hours on end. I barely touch my PlayStation now, and I don't play at all on the PC, because if I play on the PC, I will be ill in under an hour. I think it might be the refresh rate at the monitor. Looking at those kind of graphics with that kind of refresh rate, it just does not go well for me. So I've got to really pace myself and plan ahead. But that aside, that's a tangent. I do have plans for my reading. And I think I'm going to be able to enjoy my reading for April. Because, first of all, I have Stardust, which I started reading this book during a reading sprint thing that I happened to catch. Where they were doing these different reading prompts, and it was 20 minutes of reading followed by a 10-minute break, and then 20 minutes of reading and a 10-minute break. And I followed along, and I picked up a new book just for that, to give it a try. I could have continued on with Senlin at the time, but I wanted to try something new. And the prompt they started it with was a fantasy with a dark cover, so that's what I picked. And I got halfway through the book in a day. Stardust is not a difficult read, and getting this far in one day, like 90 pages in one day, was an incredible feeling. Pacing myself and reading like that really, really helped. I mean, it didn't help that I then followed up with an entire week's worth of migraines. I don't think it was related, because it didn't happen immediately the following day, but it didn't help that happened. But if those kinds of reading sprint style of reading, where you read for 20 minutes, you take a break, you chat on Discord for 15 minutes, if that is what I need to do in order to reliably get reading time in, I'll do that. That sounds fantastic. like I say, I got through 90 pages of Stardust in one day. And it's 196 pages, so I could legitimately have done this in 2 days. Now, if that's the case, I'm going to finish Stardust. I'm going to try doing some more of these reading sprints and reading vlog things when I see them, to try and spur me on to read in an organised way where I've got a planned break and I can, trick my eyes and my brain into letting me do things without making me ill. I have a few other books that I'm going to try it with, and I've purposely picked these for their length. Obviously, I've still got Tau Zero, which I'm still less than halfway through, but given its length, I reckon I can finish this in a day or two as well. Tau Zero is 190 pages long, so almost exactly the same length as Stardust, and I'm 73 pages in. So again, that could be a 2-day read, I'd say, if I'm going to spread it out. Which, let's be fair to myself here and assume that I'm going to take longer than my experience with Stardust was. So, some other books I want to try. I have The Day of the Triffids. It's a book that I think I've read before, but I can't remember. And this is bizarre. I know I've seen an adaptation. I am very familiar with the story. I've seen at least one, maybe 2 adaptations. I am fairly sure that I've read it whilst I was in school, I think. But I don't remember if I actually did read this or if it was just us reading excerpts of it for a paper in an English class. It's one that I really do want to read, and it's one that my sister loves. It's one of her favourite books. So I think it would be intriguing to be able to get this one read. Now, this one is... the print is a fair bit smaller, so this is a much denser book than the other two. And it's 233 pages long. So you may as well consider this 300 pages long by comparison because of how much denser the text is. Comparing the word count, I guarantee this is over 350 words a page. So this is a far denser book than it looks. But it's still a fairly short one. I have Elevation by Stephen King. This is, again, pretty damn small. This is, I think, the shortest book Stephen King has ever written. And given that it also includes an excerpt of The Institute, that just goes to show how tiny it is. It's 132 pages long. And that much at the back is the first chapter of The Institute, which I already own. So, yeah, that was unnecessary. But I suppose the book looked too thin to justify selling it otherwise. But yeah, 130 pages. And this isn't as dense, word-wise. This is about as dense as the other two, so I could theoretically read that in one sitting. But let's assume that it's going to take me 2. Another one that I've got that I want to read. Again, I've seen an adaptation. Never actually read this one, though. George Orwell's Animal Farm. Fantastic. Really important text that I should have read. And again, it's only just over 100 pages. It's 113 pages. So this is, again, a potential 1-session read. Now, let's assume that it takes me 2. At the very least, that's, 5, 6 books there that I can read through that would take me maybe 2 weeks if I was to pace myself and read the way I've been reading. Now, those are all books I want to try out, and I'm going to pick them based on moods. This isn't a TBR as such. These are just books that I've picked up that I'm going to give a go to. I do also have other books that I want to try to read in the next few weeks. I want to go back to Isaac Asimov and actually read Foundation. This was one of the buddy reads for a few months back, and I never actually sat down and read it. It'll be a reread for me. I did read it a while back when I was in uni. So this is a book that I really want to sink my teeth into because, like I say, I've got the sequels, and this is a classic. Like, Star Wars would not exist if this didn't exist, because they took a lot of inspiration from it. But this is much more science driven than Star Wars ever was. So, whilst a lot of the themes and a lot of the content was taken by like popular I say sci-fantasy. I mean science fiction. The word that's in question is science, not fiction. So space fantasy is probably a better term than science fantasy, because there's no science in Star Trek. But yeah, it's, again, a pretty short book. It's a bit of a chunker compared to them. Like, when you compare them side by side, it's more than twice the thickness. But when you compare that to something Sanderson writes, it's bloody tiny. It's a pamphlet. I want to go back to the polity. I've read bits of Prador Moon multiple times, and I keep putting it down and not going back to it. I don't know why. It's a really, really fun, pulpy space opera. I want to give it more of a chance. I want to be able to go back to the polity and actually read through it. There's still a bookmark in it from the last time I started reading it, where I got barely anywhere into it. But yeah, this is a series that I want to give more of a chance to, because I read Gridlinked quite a while ago, and these are the prequels, and then I've got Gridlinked and then all of the Agent Cormac series, and I want to give them a try because I really enjoyed Gridlink, and I want to see if it holds up, because when I read Gridlink, I was not familiar really with the genre as I am now. I wasn't as invested in the genre, and I was kind of just reading it on a whim. I want to give it more time to really sink in for me. Other books I do want to get to. I started a couple of series, and I'd like to continue on with them. I want to read the next in the Hunger Games series. The Hunger Games surprised the hell out of me. It was really good. Way better than they had any fucking right to be. So I want to give it a try. I also want to read the next in The Expanse. And this one actually is a bloody chonker compared to everything else I've been discussing. I want to continue on with The Expanse. The Expanse is fantastic. Leviathan Wakes was one of the best books I've read in a good long while. I would still rate Senlin Ascent higher. I really enjoyed Senlin Ascent, but Leviathan Wakes was still a fantastic book. And from what I've heard, the series gets better. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes of it. There is also going back to an old start that I got quite far into by comparison to some of the other books I've read. If I got this far into some of those, I'd have actually read them completely. And that is Name of the Wind. I'm 138 pages into this. I stopped at chapter 21. And I stopped there because I was not in the right mental state for this book. I was enjoying it, but I was finding it too upsetting. It was too much of a downer. And I want to go back to it, and I want to continue reading. I remember it very, very vividly. It was a really enjoyable read at the time. I just want to see where else this goes. And honestly, I could treat the beginning as its own book and just carry on and treat it as the next episode in the story. I'm happy to do that because it felt very well defined. I didn't struggle to get a feel for what was happening in the book. So I don't think there's any issue there. And all of these books are not on my buddy read list. The buddy read in the Discord has 3 completely different books on it. Which, again, I'm going to try. I'm going to try them. One of them I'm actually really excited to read because it's basically a fucking pamphlet. But it is an extremely old and rare pamphlet. I would like to thank Hemvar for this. Because my bloody god, was this difficult to find. There is, I think, an ebook version that's relatively affordable, but if you actually want a physical copy of this book, it is not an easy find. The Dying Earth. Tiny little thing. This book is older than me. It's older than me. This book is from the 70s. See, do we have a date on it? Oh, okay. No, scratch that. 1950. The only date in this thing is 1950. So, I'm holding 71-year-old book. I am going to be very gentle reading this one, because surprisingly, this is a 71-year-old book without a cracked spine. It's been read, but you can tell it's been read. Right, it's showing its age, but it is in shockingly great condition. And I am really looking forward to sitting down and reading this. But yeah, 1950. Lovely. I have no idea what this is about, by the way. I don't even know if it's sci-fi or fantasy. It's really hard to tell based on that cover. Could be anything, really. I mean, there's a guy holding a sword. It's what looks like a brain in a jar with tentacles coming off it that gives a vaguely sci-fi feel. But again, it's 1950s, so what passes for sci-fi in the 1950s? Who the hell knows? Like this, God knows when this was written. If this was published in 1950, this could have been written at any time before that. Like, but yeah, I'm excited to give that one a try. It's a tiny book. How many pages is it? 159 pages, though the print is bloody small. So it's probably a fair bit longer than some of the others. The other 2 books, however, Discord was not quite so kind to me. You see, I switched over to making the Buddy Read 2 books. I did this with the understanding that I'm not getting through them. And so far, the last 2 months, it's been a tie for second place, which means we've ended up with de facto 3 books going forwards. And the other 2 books are both long as hell. And my god, the print's fucking tiny as well. Oh. So, we have Empire of Silence by Christopher Riocchio. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Riocchio or Riocchio. I should probably have looked that up before I made the video, but oh well. Probably Riocchio. That sounds right. Christopher Riocchio. So, Empire of Silence. I have heard this described as what would happen if you made Star Wars, but you made it so it was actually sci-fi. It actually had proper sci-fi principles, and you added some more stakes. You made it more epic. Basically, it's Star Wars done right, is what I've been told. And I really, really hope that's true, because if that's true, that sounds incredible. I've gone on about Star Wars multiple times, because Star Wars, in principle, is something that I think I would really enjoy, but in practice, I find it to be hammy and badly written. Most of the films are absolute shite. So I like the setting and I like the concept, but basically, they had one good film with Return of the Jedi. No, wait a minute. They had one good film with Empire Strikes Back. The first Star Wars was okay for its time. Empire Strikes Back, really good film. Really great sequel. Showed what it was capable of being. Return of the Jedi, half of it was a good film, the other half was a merchandising campaign for teddy bears, which kind of ruined it. The prequels, they're okay. Everything else, utter shash. With the exception, of course, of Rogue One, which is a surprisingly good, really engaging film. And it's a spin-off that was supposed to be just to tide you over. But it's the best thing that has happened since Disney bought out the license. I've not seen The Mandalorian. I was going to watch it, but then Disney decided to fire Gina Carano for being a conservative, and I decided I didn't want to get invested in something that Disney was then going to absolutely fuck over by removing one of the main characters because she dared to be played by a person who didn't vote the way that they decided. I've got this horrible thing where I expect people to be respected and for their rights and their liberty to be their own. So who they vote for and why is none of your fucking business, and your employer has no right to decide whether or not they dislike you for that. I don't know, it's just this old-fashioned thing I like called, democracy. But yeah, that aside, I'm really looking forward to Empire of Silence. It's a massive book. It's over 600 pages, and it's really, really tiny print. This one is not much better. It's almost 700 pages. Not quite as tiny print, but it's still a bloody huge book. Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I need to give Brandon Sanderson another try. I don't want to go straight back into the Stormlight archives. I want to see what else he's got to offer. See if maybe it was just that I didn't like that specific book's construction. I enjoyed what I read, but I had a lot of issues with it. So I'm wondering whether or not Warbreaker will be a change of pace for me and something else that I can enjoy. So that's my hope. That's a lot of books that I'm hoping to get to. A lot of books I want to cover over the next month. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to be making a wrap-up where I discuss all of these books and how far I've got. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be making a video every single day. And yeah, I know what that sounds like. Sounds like a promise I'm never going to keep to. No, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make a video every single day. It's not going to be a long video. It's just going to be at the end of the day. I'm going to plug in my camera and I'm going to record a couple of minutes of just what I've read today, and then I'm going to splice them all together, and at the end of the week I'm going to put up a reading vlog. So that's what I'm going to be doing from now on. Now, the next reading vlog I'm going to be putting up, I'm going to put these up on Mondays. So they're going to be from Monday to Monday. But there is one exception to this, and that is I won't be making a video on Mondays, because Mondays is when I run my evening D&D game, which means I tend to go straight to bed after running that game. That game often runs up to midnight. So, I will not be making any videos on Monday. So the first one you'll see is the Tuesday, then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so far, so on. And then on the Monday, I'll upload it. And then the following Tuesday, I'll discuss what I read on Monday and Tuesday. So that's what I'm going to do. That's the plan. I think it'll work well this way, by dividing everything up and making it so that I discuss things as I read them. I'm going to feel like I'm making myself accountable, because at the end of the day, if I go to switch on the camera and I have nothing to talk about, it's because I just didn't read. And then I'm holding myself to account. It means that I'm going to have to force myself to find that time. And for someone with chronic fatigue, and for someone with chronic pain, where it's very tempting to just go and lie in bed and put on the telly and kind of veg out and do something that requires very little effort, convincing myself to sit up and pick up the book and read is something that I think will be good for me. So that's my plan. Anyway, it's been fun. This is an update and a quick wrap up in a sense, but also a plan for the future. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to call this. It's not really a wrap up or a TBR in the strictest sense, but it's as close as we're going to get for the end of March. And I'll see you guys fairly soon. I'm going to have some more videos up soon. I want to talk about some other issues and some other bookish thoughts I've been having. Until then, bye. Thanks for watching.